I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, the creator and co-host of Stacky Benjamins, and I'm super excited you're here with us today because I'm a guy who's seen a lot of people make a lot of mistakes when using retirement calculators. I, like you, am definitely a geek when it comes to this stuff, and I love nerding out, looking at the numbers. But I also know that if you make just a couple small mistakes, what a change it makes. And I'll tell you, when I was working as a financial planner professionally, it would drive me crazy trying to find sometimes that needle in the haystack. And you know what it usually was, guys? It usually was user error. It was one of several very, very easy to fix things, but finding the one, often difficult. So today I have two people that are with the company that creates my favorite calculator that's available to the public. It's called the NewRetirement Calculator. Let's say hello to them today. By the way, before we do that, let's do just a little bit of housekeeping. Number one is this is all about you. So if you've got questions for us, please, please, please put those in the comments. Very happy to take your questions. Very happy to slow down. I don't have a time that I have to end this thing. I want to be respectful of people's time, but I want to make sure we take your comments. Second thing is, some of you are just looking for a good calculator. That's why you're here. You've been searching for a good online calculator. We're going to use it in our examples today. We're going to do a run through after we do the 5 things. So if you want the run through, make sure you're here after our 5 things, but we'll certainly be showing the calculator as we dive into what these 5 problems are as well. If you're interested in it, we've done I like this calculator enough that we partner with these guys. So use our link, stackybenjamins.com/calculator. It's stackybenjamins.com. Let's see if I can put that on the screen. If I know how to make this work. Do I? Oh, look at that. Wow. I'm a tech genius. Okay, let's introduce the real stars of today's show. First of all, the gentleman who created this calculator. It's CFP Steve Chen. How are you, man?
Hey, Joe. Good to see you.
I'm super happy you could join me tonight, and also that we got our myriad of tech issues taken care of. We only had about 50. I couldn't get my camera working, and then we had some issues just showing screens and stuff. But we're here.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And also, just to be clear, I have passed my Series 65, so I can deliver financial advice, but I don't do that. I am not a CFP. There are CFPs on our team. There's some great engineers on our team, but I don't want to hold myself out as a CFP.
Well, let me tell you this too. Everybody involved with this operation knows that you aren't the brains. Why don't we introduce the brains of this operation? Michelle Dash is here. Michelle, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
I'm super happy you could be with us. And Michelle is going to fade back and forth out of her background a little bit. But Steve, let's start with you. Just first of all, in the genesis of the calculator, you, like me, I think, delivering financial plans and pretty unhappy with what you saw out there.
Yeah, I mean, the reason this got started is that, my mom came to my brother and I when she was approaching retirement. She, needed to borrow money basically. And she had some financial challenges. And so we tried to, outsource the problem. So we were looking around for a CFP or a financial advisor who could help her. And we really couldn't find anyone that knew a lot about the transition to retirement and decumulation. So we ended up, having to do it ourselves on spreadsheets. And, luckily for her, I have a background in financial services, and so does my brother. And, so I think we did a reasonable job, but we also saw the problem was complicated. It wasn't just like kind of what many people think of planning as, managing your assets effectively. It was thinking about Social Security, Medicare, how I'm going to draw my assets, should I move, how long should I work, when is it safe to retire, all these questions. And so we said, all right, so many people have this problem. We think that this can be solved through software. And so that's how we got started with this business and why we created, turn this into basically, think of it like TurboTax for financial planning. That's basically what we built.
And I love that term. And Michelle, you and I have known each other for a while. How did you decide? Because I know you are a money geek through and through, but how did you decide that working in this company, building this awesome calculator was for you?
So, self-proclaimed money geek. I was on Facebook searching for a Roth conversion calculator. And Steve responded and said, try out my software. And that's how we connected. And we stayed in touch, met at FinCon. And then I started working for his company a few years later.
Well, we're not here to talk about the three of us. We're here to talk about the big problems people have. So let's dive into these. Michelle, what's the first problem you see people have when it comes to using retirement calculators?
So one important problem is inflation. And obviously that's a hot topic right now with inflation on the rise. Sometimes people forget to incorporate it, or they don't really understand the inflation assumptions that they're using, which is really important when you're looking at your projections to understand the assumptions that are in your plan.
It's funny. Obviously, this year is a year when inflation really hitting home, I think, for most of us more than anybody else. And I think finally we can all see the effects of inflation. But Steve, in a normal environment, like in most years, we look at studies of what people are worried about their retirement. Inflation doesn't make the top 5. People, this is the number one problem people need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, it's come home to roost. I mean, we had so many years of super low inflation, so people's purchasing power is pretty protected. But even at 3% inflation, I think that your purchasing power gets eroded by half over 20 years, and people could easily live in a 20-year, 20+ year retirement. When you're running inflation like now, if it sustains at like 7-8%, your purchasing power gets hammered quickly. So it's a real consideration, and it's a day-to-day consideration. I mean, even for people that are working, right? Like when I go to the gas pump, I live in California, and gas swings from $3-4 to like $6. You're like, holy smokes! It cost me. For a while, my friends were like, they're driving their SUVs around. They're like, I do have my credit card in twice, because I have $100 limit to fill up my stupid SUV. And it's like, so if you're on a fixed income, it's even more of an issue. So yeah, it's a serious consideration. And essentially, you do need to invest, and you need to stay invested in a way that hedges inflation and increases your nest eggs so that your purchasing power can keep up. That's the reality.
I'm going to bring on Steve, the star of the show, the real star of the show, which is the calculator itself. First of all, just explain to us a little bit about what we're looking at here, so everybody kind of has a frame of reference.
Yeah, sure. So what you're looking at here is the dashboard. To get here, we allow anyone to build a financial plan for free, or there's a more advanced version, right? So the plus version, which is what most people end up using. So this on the left-hand side, you'll see kind of all the different components of your plan. So there's all your accounts, housing, debt, income, expenses, how money moves around your plan, estate planning, and assumptions and so forth. So what you enter there drives the plan. And so we give you a financial forecast of what's likely to happen with your money.
And just to be clear, go back up to that top. This is your age today on the left, I'm assuming,
Yep.
And then age on the right. And this is kind of your mountain of money, how much money you have throughout the plan.
Yeah, basically we're looking for what many tools do is they look at kind of where you are today and kind of how you got here. They're looking at from the past to today. We really help people look from today forward. So, in this plan, it's showing that someone, it's got a 45-year duration here. So people are, likely working and accumulating wealth and then transitioning and starting to draw their assets down. And what our users are doing is they're thinking about, what decisions do I make over the course of my life? What if I relocate? What if I claim Social Security this way? What if I start working part-time here or there? Those decisions change dynamically this plan. And you can see it reflected in your income. So we'll let you look at your lifetime income, dive into that and what's driving that, like income from work, income from Social Security, from required minimum distributions, from pension, annuities, whatever you happen to have that drives this.
Let's take a quick look, Steve, if you don't mind, on this topic of inflation, though. Just the difference between, forgetting about inflation or low inflation and high inflation, what that can do to that mountain of assets.
Yeah, so we built a little to just kind of illustrate how important this is. We built an optimistic scenario where, if inflation is super low, suddenly your probability of success jumps up, to 99%, your mountain keeps growing because your costs stay low and your returns, outrun your spending needs. Conversely, if you assume the more pessimistic scenario with high inflation, it can dramatically take your assets the other way, right? You burn your assets down earlier. So you can see what a big, especially over a long period of time, it's the opposite of compounding, right? This is compounding your expenses.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, guys. I mean, this is something a lot of people miss. I was telling Michelle and Steve earlier that there is a prominent member of the FIRE community who showed me an early calculator of his who missed inflation. And you can see in Steve's chart the difference. If you miss inflation, inflation is really bad. You run out of money, you didn't expect it, right? Or if you're super optimistic, things look really good. I don't know about you guys, Michelle. I would assume that you kind of prefer the pessimistic approach with your planning. And then if things go better, that's great, right?
Yeah, I think it's just important to test a lot of different scenarios, not just one. And that's why we have those assumptions that, you should be looking at it optimistically and pessimistically, because we don't know which one it's going to happen.
I'll go to you for the second problem people have. What's our second big hurdle or stumbling block people have problems with?
So the second problem that we see a lot is expenses, and really thinking about not forgetting different types of expenses. So there's many ways to kind of think about it. One that we see all the time is those one-time expenses, like thinking about purchasing a car 5 or 6 years from now, or the family vacation that you go on that only happens one time a year, buying Christmas gifts, big birthday parties, things that don't happen every month that aren't in your normal cash flow. And then there are other really big ones like, taxes, making sure that you're thinking about how taxes affect you when you're taking withdrawals or dipping into different accounts. And then, thinking about how your lifestyle changes over time. Your spending now might be different than your spending 5 years from now, or when you're in early retirement or later retirement. And just assuming that you're going to spend the same every year is really common and probably a mistake, because nobody spends the same over all the years.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, Steve, especially these expenses in early retirement. I would assume, you got a nice mountain of money. You think that you can spend a lot of money in your early retirement years, and, without planning, that might be not even a little bit of a mistake. That could derail everything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we make it easy for people to progress through setting a basic budget, kind of ballparking their numbers just to get started. You can see that here. Like if I go into the expenses and healthcare section, there's a pretty simple way you can kind of set a high level basic budget that lasts for your life, or you can start segmenting it like while I'm, while my kids are here, when my kids are in college, or after that, or, as I get into retirement, or over time. And basically over time, what we see is the data shows that once you move into retirement, your real expenses decline about 1% a year, or about 10% per decade. So it's actually pretty safe to assume that your expenses will decline over time.
Will slow down. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a material difference. If you want to jump in and do something more robust, you can come in here and then start to, you can basically in this tool, build a robust budget across all your categories. So housing, utilities, auto, food, dining, personal care, whatnot, and kind of go as deep as you want if you want to do that. This all gets rolled up, into two basic groupings: stuff that you must spend and stuff that you'd like to spend, which is another important concept there. Yeah, because a lot of people, you want to know that, hey, and we actually let people forecast this. So if you are back out here in the assumptions, you can model, okay, what if I'm just spending on my basic budget? Here's my probability of success. If I'm modeling just what I must spend, okay, I have a really high chance of success. But if I spent everything in this scenario that I'd like to spend, I have a lower chance of success. So what you can do is play with this plan so that you can get to the level of, it'll support the level of spending that you anticipate. And a big part of this planning is also literacy. So as people go through and build a plan, there's a bunch of content and educational resources, and Michelle and her team have built courses that, help people kind of learn about these topics and just make sure they have control.
Well, and I wanted to say too, Steve, on here, people watching, that you don't have to start with a bunch of different assumptions. You can put in very basic stuff, I would imagine, to begin, right? To just get directionally where you want to go. And as you become more fluent with the tool over time, which I've used it 100 times, it's super easy to use. But when you first use any new tool, it's difficult. But you can take a quick snapshot, I would think, in an hour or two.
That's right. You can, people create plans, and the fastest way is like a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, or the comprehensive way is like 8 minutes to get to the core of a plan. And then, I would say, an hour is probably the appropriate amount of time. But, getting a financial plan from a CFP, the average cost is $2,500. So with this, it's just over $100 that you can have your own plan, take it with you. And it's not mutually exclusive. If you have an advisor, you can also,
Sure.
A lot of our customers are, bring this to their advisor and show it to them and compare it to what they get from Money Guide Pro or eMoney Advisor. And what we hear is that generally the plans line up, which is great. So it's good validation that, these are accurate plans that people are creating. And a lot of folks just want to know, they want to get a second opinion, and they want to get their hands dirty and kind of like really be thoughtful themselves. Okay, what am I really spending money on? How am I invested? How am I claiming Social Security? How is healthcare going to work? Do I feel confident that I understand the risks in front of me and have a level of control, so I can sleep well at night?
Well, and I think I'm speaking to the choir, because if you're here, you're already interested in using your own calculator. But even in my book, I talk about this, that even if you go to a financial planner, you can't abdicate the throne. You have to know your numbers. You have to be in control. And I love the idea, Steve, of taking those to your financial advisor or smart people you have around you, because it creates these great talking points for these fantastic, what do we value is what we're really trying to get at, and how much of that can we actually afford, and how can we cut the things that we don't value. So I love that aspect of this. Michelle, that's expensive. I mean, we could go into taxes, long-term care. Those are ugly, much longer scenarios, but you guys can already see how implementing those and making sure that you run some assumptions in your calculator around what are we going to do if long-term care strikes. The interesting thing is, a lot of people decide ahead of time, they're like, oh, long-term care is expensive, so I'm going to do nothing. And I'm not talking about insurance, by the way. I'm talking about going into a facility is expensive, so I'm just going to do nothing. That is a plan, right? Not having a plan is still a plan. It's a crappy plan, but it is a plan. So run some scenarios and then think about, what am I going to do? And maybe that doesn't involve insurance, but certainly you want to worry about this when you're younger and not worry about it when, a family member is getting ready to go. All right. That's my rant about long-term care. Let's get.
Yeah, that's so important. And in the tool, we include long-term care by default, that you're going to have long-term care expenses a few years before longevity. And then you can have the ability to turn it off or buy insurance, apply that. But it is such an important topic. And when you see a giant spike in your expenses, it really sparks that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that people spend, I think it's, 40 or something percent, a really high percent of their total lifetime healthcare costs happen in the last 18 months of their life. So if your plan is to have no plan, you're still likely spending money, in the later stage of your life. And so that's either going to fall on your estate or it's going to fall on your heirs, unless they don't care. So, and we illustrate that for folks. And a lot of people ask us that question. It's like, what are these spikes? And we're like, well, that's the data. That's what the data shows.
Yeah. I mean, nothing speaks louder than the numbers themselves. I've got a great point, which I know is a point that Michelle was pointing out to me that you guys worked really hard on, that Money Geek Mark says he really likes the Roth conversion suggestion tool and the effect on lifetime tax savings in the plus version of your plan. Can you talk to that a little bit about, because a lot of people now in the last, 2 months here, really thinking about Roth conversions. If you haven't done a Roth conversion yet, we had Ed Slott recently on the show talking about you want to get this done if you're doing this this year. But Michelle, can you speak to the Roth conversion?
Yeah, so in the tool, we have an area where you can model Roth conversions, and you can actually look at your projected tax liability over time and kind of identify if you have any tax windows where Roth conversions might be a good option, which means convert money from a tax deferred account into a tax-free forever type account. So you can manually model that in the tool, but if you're looking for a way to get started, we have a Roth Conversion Explorer that is actually going to run some rules against your plan and identify a suggested strategy of conversions so that you wind up with a higher estate value at the end of your plan. So you can certainly use that as a starting point in developing your strategy. And going back to our first point of inflation and assumptions, you want to run that Explorer and make sure you change assumptions because your strategy will change based on inflation and the assumptions in your plan.
Yeah, no matter what calculator you're using, I think running a few different assumptions. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? All these what if scenarios, I think, are the most important part of any plan that you do. John has a question for you as well. Can you manually enter the inflation rate or just use the 3 options of optimistic, average, pessimistic? How about applying a historical recession to the model? Can you make it wave?
Yeah, so you can certainly impact your inflation rates. Everybody can set their own for optimistic and pessimistic. The average is going to be the mathematical mean between the two. So you can certainly explore different options with those.
Which means, just play with it like it's if then scenarios, John. And what I do when I'm using the calculator, I will notch it up to a big number and then make sure I put it back down before I go to my next variable so I don't mess up all my other calculations that are in there. It's just because I've done that before too, where I'm running an if then kind of thing and I make a change to the plan and then I don't go back and change the number and I'm like, what the hell? And then it's, user error, Joe being an idiot.
I mean, we also let people control inflation for Social Security, for healthcare, and for housing all separately because our users are very often saying, hey, where I live, housing appreciates. Housing appreciates very differently in like Northern California versus, Utah versus Michigan versus New York. So we give people those levels of control, and same thing with Social Security. Some people think it's going to be more aggressive, and Social Security has actually been pretty shocking, right? We're seeing like 7-8% increases in Social Security, so it's actually doing. Yeah. Like the thing about Social Security is that it's really the world's best annuity. It's much cheaper to claim Social Security late than to buy an annuity, and it's truly, at least right now, inflation indexed. And that's advertised. So it's really meaningful. Like these are a lot of things that people don't think about unless they go a little bit deeper. But it pays hugely, not just for yourself, but also for your spouse, your survivor. Right? It's very important that the higher earner really indexes the maximum Social Security benefit, so that if they predecease their spouse, they'll inherit a much higher Social Security benefit. So.
Guys, we're doing great. We're at the halfway point on our top 5, and we are also at about the halfway point of what we kind of want our time to be. So, Michelle, what's our third one on our list of 5 common retirement calculator mistakes?
Okay, so the third one is planning is not a one-time activity. Even though you are creating a plan at a point in time, it is an ongoing process because, your goals change, your life changes, new things happen, you change jobs, you lose jobs, you add family members, you might change your location. So every time you have a life event and just periodically, you should be revisiting your plan to make sure that your goals are still the same and your situation is still the same.
How often, Steve, with the calculator, do you see people like to change their numbers, people that are your power users?
I mean, what we see is when people are first setting it up, they're definitely more, they're heavily engaged. They're entering it. They're making sure it's right. They're likely participating in classes, maybe talking to a coach. sometimes raising their hand and saying they want to talk to a CFP. Once the plan's set, typically quarterly, people are revisiting it. Maybe annually, they're taking a really big look at it. I mean, look, you don't have to, if you have a solid plan and your investments are in a good place and you're kind of doing the right things, it's more of a maintenance thing. What happens is your life changes. You might decide you want to retire early, or you might decide, hey, I want to spend a year in Portugal or whatever. You're going to have a parent move closer or whatever it is. So that's when people get in and they start saying, okay, what's the impact of making these different decisions?
When I was a financial planner, we would build the plan and tweak the plan, but we would generally use the plan and monitor that plan and work with where we're at in time and see if we're ahead or behind for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, we would gut it completely and rebuild everything from the ground up. And for me, anyway, that was kind of a good cadence of use the plan for 3 years, tweaking a little bit, seeing if you're ahead or behind, and then gutting it about every third year. And as you get more comfortable with the tool, Steve, to your point, it doesn't take that long.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely worth it to sit down. And it's also really valuable to sit down with a third party. If it's your spouse that knows a lot, or you have a financial advisor or a tax person, and just kind of benchmark things on a annual basis or every couple of years.
This is an interesting question from Keith, and I'd like to get your take on it, guys. With 5 kids, one being 18, I wonder if Keith is bald like I am with 5 kids. I only had twins, and look at what happened to me. Just asked to open a retirement account. Awesome. You're 18-year-old. Nice job, Keith. So we opened a Roth. Is using a retirement calculator appropriate for her to start using at 18 years old? Use a retirement calculator?
Well, yeah, I mean, so this, is a retirement calculator, but it's also it's good for general financial planning. I think the answer is yes, because getting a long-term perspective on your money, the earlier you can do it and have that, zooming out effect of like really seeing what the impact is of making small choices, especially when you're younger, right? So one thing that I think, when I talk to people about, achieving financial independence and financial control, I think everybody is kind of daunted. They don't know where to start, but like you can make a ton of progress, but it might take 15 years, right? 15 years is like enough time to see a real impact. So if you, manage your expenses, save money diligently, ideally, 15, 20% or more, right? Invest in low cost index funds and, and then rebalance on a semi-regular basis. Don't keep things simple, but just keep doing it. Up and down in markets like this, keep investing. You'll wake up and be like, hey, so at 33 for this person with a Roth, if they keep doing that, they're very likely to be so much farther down the path of financial independence than 99% of the population.
Well, and that was actually my point, Keith, was that I agree with Steve, but what I don't want to do is chase somebody that's really excited about this away by taking them off the deep end of Numbersville. Like, I will always advocate, by the way, that using just simple rules of thumb is a waste of time and that you're smart enough to do it right. You are smart enough to do it right. And people are like, I don't want to chase people away. Well, teaching people these half measures, I think, doesn't make your plan as sticky as knowing why you're doing what you're doing. But at the very least, just showing compounding interest on that money, like a simple calculator of what that money's going to make. Every 18-year-old, 17-year-old, 16-year-old I have talked to, and you go to any of the investment house websites, and we'll cover that later on another point, but you go to any of the calculators on their site and just do a simple model of what could this be at different interest rates. People are like, I put just a few $1,000s in this when I'm young and I'm wealthy. Yep. Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, a question here from Sarah. Sarah asks, does the calculator allow you to factor in your pension? It does. And if you don't mind, Steve, can we go back and show her
Sure.
Just that page? Because this is a really easy one, Sarah.
Yeah. So in the My Plan left-hand side, you're going to see income, and you'll see work, Social Security, passive income, pensions. You can add multiple pensions here. So there's a pension in here right now, but you could add another one for your spouse, for instance. Is it monthly? Is it lump sum? And then you can name it, put the income, start age, stop age.
And look at the cost of living adjustment on there. Mhm.
Yep, you can put an optimistic and pessimistic. You can say if it's taxable or federal only, and is there a survivor benefit. So the reason like this kind of stuff is in here, and this is what we do differently than other tools out there, is that we've had hundreds of thousands of users use this, and we've gotten so much feedback. Like I remember talking to a detective in LA. He's like, "Hey, you're the only tool I found that supports multiple pensions." And that got him super excited. So, and then they're like, and by the way, it doesn't have 75% survivor benefit. We're like, okay, well, we're going to add that.
Well, and I have to tell you, that was the frustrating part for me, switching from the professional side to the financial media side, was looking at looking at the calculators that are available for the average person. It was way too dumbed down for me. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, keeping it a little simpler because you're not a pro at this is one thing, but just so dumbed down that I felt like they were inaccurate. Like that was what drove me crazy. Anybody that wanted to do any piece of this themselves was getting an inaccurate number. David has a question too while we're on this point. And then I want to move on if you guys don't mind. I take it the calculator does Monte Carlo simulation.
Yep, it does. And you can control for different kinds of factors. I mean, the main chart you saw is driven by Monte Carlo, but you can also, you can not just vary interest rates, but you can vary inflation, medical inflation, and wage growth. You can apply different factors to Monte Carlo, and it's basically the basis for how kind of where we're going with portfolio. So today, this is just a planning tool for looking at your income, expenses, and everything else, right? It's not saying how you can reflect your portfolio in it, but it's not saying how to potentially change it. And in the future, where this is going to go is it will provide guidance for that if you want it, but you don't have to do it.
The important thing about this, I want to note from my book is I think the tools like this are super important, but combining it with discussions, going back to the point that Mark said earlier about your money. Cheryl and I have a weekly money discussion. We try to keep it at 20 minutes. We make it really light. By the way, this applies if you're single, if you're in a relationship, if you have an accountability partner, if you don't, whatever. Schedule 20 minutes aside a week. But, and by the way, I like weekly. I don't like these, as I went around the country on the book tour, I saw people that would have these, what felt to me like a Camp David set twice a year. And in any relationship, one person likes that, the other person hates it. And if you're planning with anybody, you want to keep it light and fun. And all we do is we look through our expenses from the week before, and then we talk about what expenses we have coming up. And then twice a year, we will pull out the calculator and we'll look at are we ahead or behind? And along the way, me as the nerd, I will go in and make tweaks to the plan. Cheryl's not interested in making the little tweaks to the plan. I'm interested in that. But Cheryl is interested in the weekly meeting. If I find something when I tweak the plan, that I bring that up in that 20-minute meeting. Keep it at 20 minutes, keep it light. We do it over wine or pancakes. But I think this idea, Michelle, that you brought up, that it's planning and not just a plan, and the discussions are what's important, I think really drives this tool and makes it far more useful. I mean, so many people have so many cool ass tools, excuse my language. They have so many great tools, but they don't use them, right? They think if I collect the next tool, I'm going to get somewhere. No. Find your tool, have the meetings, use the tool. God, I'm ranty tonight. All right, let's do, Michelle. What's our fourth problem people have when they're using retirement calculators?
Okay, the fourth thing is that what you model in your plan, in order to be successful, you have to actually take action offline. So that might be being honest with yourself when you put information in the plan, whether it's your expenses or how much you're saving. You have to put in accurate numbers to get accurate projections. And then when you model scenarios that are kind of what if, and I could do this, in order for that to actually happen in real life, you have to do something outside of the plan to take action. So that might be going to your employer and figuring out how you contribute 1% more, or that might be actually spending a little less every month. But just modeling it in your plan isn't going to make it happen in real life.
This is like modeling that I'm eating well and then having a donuts for lunch, right?
That's right.
I saw this so much when I was a financial planner that people were like, no. What if I promise that I'm going to do this? Well, are you actually going to do that thing? If you're not going to do it, then why would we model it? Let's try to figure out what you're actually going to do. Um, I don't know that we have anything more to say about that one, do we?
I mean, I have one comment. I think that it's good to write down and to hold yourself accountable and have someone else you're talking to about it and kind of publicize your goals, and then look back and say, did I actually do this thing? And if you haven't done it, recognize that, hey, maybe I need to get someone else to help me do it. And this is where I think that for most people, the financial advisor, the main benefit is actually accountability and following through, or implementing for you the changes. Because a lot of these changes are tough, and you're like, okay, I'm going to invest, or I need to not sell when the markets are super volatile. Actually doing those actions is super important.
Yeah, it isn't what you know. I would call them, when I was practicing, Steve, broke professors, people that came into my office and they knew everything. They knew everything and they'd done nothing. And you would see people, by the way, that as you guys know, they'd use the wrong stuff. They'd use garbage products. Their plan is going only 80% efficiently where they're going, and they're far better off than some of these broke professors that know all the best stuff to be in and just don't do it. It's about what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that term, broke professors.
I wish I had a drum roll, because we've got one more, guys. And Michelle, what's our fifth one?
All right. Well, the fifth one is to really consider the source of the calculator. So you always want to think about who is providing you this information and what is their intention. So if you're using an insurance calculator and it's from an insurance company, you just might want to take note of the results that you're getting. One thing that's really important to New Retirement is that we're very unbiased, and our goal is to just deliver unbiased information and help you learn and be literate. We don't sell products, and we're not affiliated with anything, so that we can give very clean kind of reactions to your plan with no other intention.
I think this is really important because of the fact that, and by the way, a great thing to do if you're bored on any weekday, turn on CNBC and they will tell you what somebody's role is. So Steve Chen, manager of the XYZ Growth Fund. Steve is manager of the XYZ Growth Fund. How do you feel about growth prospects over the next 12 months, Steve?
They're going to be up and to the right, Joe. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And even if you say that they're not, you're going to say, well, I think it's going to be bad, Joe, but here's the deal. Yeah. That's when you want to get in. That's when you want to buy, because we are looking at a resurgence. It's just, I love playing that game, because every single person who goes on CNBC is going to tell you, the world from their point of view, and everybody has a point of view. It doesn't make their point of view bad, though, Steve. It just means you want to know that ahead of time.
Yeah, I think this is super important. I mean, this is a big part of why we started this company. When I think about financial services, which I worked in, for most of my career at places like Schwab and, consulting at Fidelity and Wells Fargo and different places, basically money is made one of two ways. Either they're selling products, right? And they tend to be sold, especially if you have less money, you're more likely to be sold products, and there's transaction fees, and that's not always aligned, right? Because there's an incentive to make the sale. Or there's an AUM fee, right? A percent of your assets, we're making money. And this is the same for big companies. They'll be making net interest income behind the scenes. And what you'll find is like, hey, there's lots of free things. Like, we'll give you a free calculator, we'll give you this or that, right? Or free sounding advice. Like, hey, I'm your financial advisor, but I'm not going to send you bills, right? But I'm taking part of your money behind the scenes. You just never see it. And the thing is, that creates a misalignment. And so what we're doing that's weird, and that people have to get used to, is we charge people like, hey, you're paying us, but guess what? I work for you, no one else. And the input that goes into this is from experts that are paid from you and people in the community that give us feedback that we can make it better. But that's it. There's no other sources. And I think that's a super important thing that, unfortunately, isn't the standard in personal finance and also even in your 401k at work.
Yeah.
Like you have to really pay attention inside your 401k. How's money being made? Who's doing what? You might be giving a tool, like Fidelity has good tools, but Fidelity also has a lot of mutual funds and annuity products and stuff like that. And you may be hearing in your recommendation, you should do this or that. It's worth benchmarking and the results and getting completely independent guidance.
Jane Bryant Quinn, who I have a lot of respect for, maybe some people are too young to know who Jane Bryant Quinn is, but she was a fantastic media person who spoke about financial planning, wrote about finance and financial planning a lot. Back at around the turn of the century, guys, she sent her assistant to different financial planners to do financial plans. And what she found was that financial planners who were commission-based planners like to show incredibly pessimistic plans, very, very pessimistic plans. And they would give you those plans, by the way, those financial plans for free. The financial plan cost you nothing. It was because the general thing they were hoping for was, we want you to save a lot of money. I'm going to give it to you for free so that you save that money with us. And then when they went to fee-only financial planners, the plans were much more optimistic, right? Would include things like Social Security, and maybe you would test Social Security to maybe a half level, just to see what would happen. So you're relying on it maybe for a car payment or whatever, but much more reliable seeming results or realistic results. And yet you would pay money for those things, right? So once you knew how people were paid, and it's like Michelle talking about I have friends that started with some of the insurance companies out there, and those always show a generous insurance need, like a very generous insurance need.
The thing is, it goes both ways. We had one of our community members, this guy, Glenn Nakamoto, who one is super into this stuff, and he had a really robust plan with pensions and stuff like that, but he wanted to have a floor income that definitely covered his cost of living and was indexed to inflation and all this stuff. Anyway, so as part of doing this, he's like, okay, maybe I should get an annuity. And he ran around and talked to a bunch of RIAs and said, what do you think about me taking a chunk of my portfolio, like 7 figures of it, and buying SPIAs or a ladder of SPIAs, single premium immediate annuities, which are pretty efficient products, right?
Yeah.
And they all said no. They all said that is a bad idea. And he's running the numbers. We did a whole podcast on this. He's like, actually, I think it's a good idea. And they're like, no, it's a bad idea. Because guess what? A big chunk of the asset, of the portfolio goes away. And so, look, generally, it's not like everyone's a bad actor, but you just have to be aware and understand that everyone's got their perspective.
Yeah, just as as an example, I take my car to Discount Tire. I love Discount Tire, but I know exactly how they get paid. I know exactly what they offer, what they don't offer. I know how they get paid, and I take my stuff there. So we're definitely just know. And I think the number of people that came into my office, Steve, and said, well, you know what? I'm not going to go with you because this other person's going to do a plan for me for free. And I said, really? You think that somebody's going to work for free? Like, oh yeah, they're just a nice guy. Are you? No. Yeah. Yes, they might be a nice guy, but everybody's got to eat somehow. Just know how people get paid no matter what it is. And I think you're better off. I want to be,
Sorry. The thing is like when you're, it's like, this is your life savings, right? So for sure, ultimately you as an individual should, be watching over it closely. And you have to be really thoughtful about who's giving you advice about your life savings. And multiple opinions are good. It's like, hey, it's your life too, like your health. If you might want to go to, you probably, have a doctor. And if you get bad news, you might go to a second doctor, get a second opinion. Right. So,
yeah. And by the way, for the Uber nerds in the room, like Mark, who put this, what I have on the screen, this is why OG is very worried about the word fiduciary is losing all meaning. It has no bite. There's no enforcement. And he's really pretty peeved about that because, most RIAs are written a fiduciary, but if they do assets under management and they don't offer an annuity, you might not be getting fiduciary advice from a fiduciary. So, which drives me crazy. Hey, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. At this point, guys, we are going to run through any piece of the calculator that you'd like to see. But those are the 5. And by the way, thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with Steve and Michelle and I. If you're at all interested in this calculator, you can see why we partner with them. We want to make sure that our stacker community has some good stuff. And I love that we've got stackers like Sean that have used it and have had a good experience. But it's stackingbenjamins.com/calculator. I can put that right up on the screen. We show you exactly what it costs. You'll understand it going in. There's a free trial period, so you can check it out. You can kick the tires, see how much of you like it. And I'm sure you'll like it as much as I do. But I'd love if you want to stick around and see more of the product, or if you've got questions, I can be here for a little longer. I don't know about Steve and Michelle, but I got nothing going on. So we can hang out for a little bit.
Let's pandemic. We can hang out.
Yeah, let's back a year and a half ago, we'd have been, hey, I got nothing for the next week.
I'm never leaving the garage, so whatever you want.
All right, I'm going to put this back on screen, guys. And John says, alternatives, do you just enter the basis of a real estate investment, or can you also enter projected return on investment, IRR, et cetera?
So I'll take a first pass, but Michelle can probably weigh in on this. So we get this question a lot. We do allow people to put in, for instance, model what happens with their primary home. Like what happens if I do things like relocate, sell or rent, put a reverse on it, refi, add a mortgage, that kind of stuff. We also allow people to add other real estate that they own today, and also think about real estate purchases they might make in the future, and sales they might make in the future. However, this is not like, we were just talking about this in bigger pockets, and there's a chunk of our users that they want the next level of functionality here, which is tying everything back perfectly. We understand that it's on our roadmap. It's not totally done yet, but there are workarounds in terms of like entering one-time transactions and stuff like that. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to riff on this stuff at all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can enter in the future real estate. If you happen to be a landlord and you're interested in, entering depreciation, or when you do make a sale, you should enter in taxes as an expense. Everyone has a different tax strategy, so we don't try to model that for you. We just recommend that you enter it in as an expense. If you go to our help center, we have lots and lots of articles that outline all of these edge case scenarios on how to model it in the tool. So I definitely recommend that you look in the help center for the article. You can find that through the little chat in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And if you're still trying to model a scenario that you can't figure out, write into our help desk using the little chat area. We try to respond within 24 hours, and we can usually help you model any scenario. The tool is fairly flexible.
Yeah. What I just showed really quick was I created like, hey, I own a Tahoe cabin for rent, or I own a rental cabin in Tahoe. And then I want to say, okay, now I want to sell it in the future at my retirement age. We forecast what it's going to be worth. And then, the impact to your plan as well. So every time you make a change in here, it will ripple through your whole plan. And that's what's unique about this. All your taxes, federal and state, future income, future expenses, all that stuff. It moves the money into their appropriate account and flows everything through. I mean, so it's not zero, but it's not in this particular area. We're aware of the issue, and we're further tuning it.
But to my point, though, Steve, I've looked at a lot of calculators available to consumers. I can't think of a competitor of yours that's really robust in that area either. So yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you're working on it, but I don't know, tying it into your financial plan. Like there's plenty of real estate centric software out there that will manage your properties, show all the stuff for your property, but tied into your financial plan. I just don't see that available for consumers. What's the next thing we should, well, you know what, before we walk through anything else, you had mentioned coaching around this as well. Michelle, can you talk to different levels of coaching that you guys offer for people that are trying to get their financial plan together?
Yeah, so we like to offer like a lot of different scenarios. So first we have live classes, that's group format that anyone can attend. And that's just to help you create your plan know where to enter everything in, and be able to ask questions. Once you have a solid plan and you're feeling pretty comfortable, we offer coaching services with our plan experts that can help guide you in the right direction. They can answer questions about financial education. They can validate your plan with you, and they can recommend different, scenarios that you might try to run. What they won't do is offer any kind of financial advice or specific recommendations. If you're looking for specific recommendations, someone to, help walk you through different scenarios or create a Roth conversion strategy for you, then we guide you to work with a CFP. And we have a New Retirement Advisor CFP who is happy to work with you for fee only, very transparent pricing.
Yep.
Anything else that you guys want to see, let us know, because we have them for a few more minutes. But Steve, anything specifically you think we should shine a light on that we didn't?
There's a digital coach in here as well. So when you're creating a plan, it will be scanning your plan for, are there potential issues with accuracy or strategy ideas or actions you could do or key dates. We let you measure progress in this thing as well. There's also just, various explorers, like what if I do this, Monte Carlo, Social Security optimization, the Roth stuff that we talked about. I think the general thing is that this thing's always evolving and getting smarter and better based on largely the feedback from the community. So the vision here is to largely automate this stuff and drive fees down, across the board. Our average customer is a mass affluent type of person, right? They've been saving and planning. They have assets. And so we offer them a way to take control for super low cost, have something they control themselves is totally portable. That's getting better all the time. And, I think you have to really, especially, if you've got like $1 million and you're paying, 1% for a financial planner, that's fine as long as you're getting the value. But we think the future is going to be, it's a material cost if your safe withdrawal rate is like 4%. So it's like 25% of your income, right? So if you have $1 million and you're like, my safe withdrawal rate is 4%, 40,000 a year, plus I have, 30,000 in Social Security across my spouse and I, that's 70,000 a year. And, I want to, and maybe I have a pension or something. If 10 grand of your 40,000 goes away, it's a material amount of money. And, it's just, people need to be aware of these things. And, we think for a lot of folks, they can manage this themselves. It can be much cheaper.
Yeah.
And we're just like, there needs to be a lot of scale here. Like, we're here to help 100 million people worldwide, right? Or 200 million people. That's what we're trying to design for.
Michelle, anything else that we should model or look at, or do you think we covered the big stuff?
I think Steve hit all the most favorited features or common features. I think we're always rolling out new things in the tool. Every couple of weeks, we release minor enhancements, sometimes major enhancements. So it's always good to check back to see what's new. We're going to be updating scenarios and doing scenario comparison in the coming weeks. So always new features.
Stephanie's got a question for us. If a bare bone plan takes just a couple minutes, do you want to run through the basic inputs for a quick overview? I would think, Stephanie, absolutely. Don't you? You guys agree?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, you can find it all here on the left-hand side.
Oh, sorry. I just turned it off.
Yeah, no worries. When you go to create a plan, it's just an email and password, or you can sign in with Google, for instance. But yeah, we'll take you through either a very quick 2-minute or a comprehensive onboarding that goes, basically it's income, expenses, assets, and debts. That's what we're taking people through. On the left-hand side here, it's a little bit more broken out in terms of your accounts. So it's going to ask you questions about your taxable, tax advantage, tax deferred accounts. You can enter those all in here. We'll take you through housing. What do you have? And then once things are entered, you can do more operations. We'll ask you about debt, and you can enter as many, debt items as you want. Income that we talked about a little bit before, work, Social Security, pensions, annuities, stuff like that. If you expect windfalls, expenses, and we're looking at, kind of general expenses, healthcare expenses, asking you about long-term care. It gets a little bit more, you can start diving into the details where you get to like recurring contributions, you know, what you do with excess income, how do you want to withdraw money. So this is actually stuff you're setting up in your plan. And you know, if you're later stage, some of the stuff matters more than if you're, you know, if you're younger.
Well, the cool thing, Steve, is to your point, you do receive a windfall that you didn't expect. You just go in and put it in, and you'll see instantly the effect, right? Like if you win this big Powerball lottery that I think is happening in an hour, then you've got it. I think I got to play to win, and I think I'd rather be here with you guys than waste money on that. But anyway. Well, Michelle, Steve, thank you so much for walking through it. Guys, it's stackingbenjamins.com/calculator. It's a new retirement calculator. And to Keith's note, Keith had a note saying, we need to do these more often. And we did. And then I went on this See Everything tour where I went to 40 cities. It took me, guys, a couple months to get my feet back on the ground and get caught back up with the podcast and all the other things. But we definitely have another one coming up. And for the 50 of you that are left here, I can tell you that we are targeting, not that you're going to note this on your calendar, but on November 16th, do a walkthrough Morningstar. I know a lot of people have asked us, we talk about Morningstar all the time on the show. What do I need to know in Morningstar? What don't I need to know? How do I evaluate a fund? What do I look at? We talked about the risk measurements there, the fees, how to find all that stuff. Because if you're new to Morningstar, it's tough, but we're going to do a walkthrough of Morningstar in just a couple of weeks. So, all right, guys, thanks a ton. We'll see you next time. Go stack Benjamins.
Thanks, Joe. I saw John Roberts by door.